thrilled to introduce our speaker today. It's Professor Jerrod Henderson, who's an assistant professor in the William A. Brookshire Department of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering at the University of Houston. And Professor Henderson has dedicated his career to developing programs to support students in STEM career pathways. And has been the co-founder and director of numerous very successful programs that have had an impact on countless number of students. And in addition to this work, Professor Henderson is recognized as an excellent teacher as well as researcher. Many awards, but most recently one of the NSF Career Awards. So really thrilled to have him here today. And thank you again for your patience, and we'll turn it over to you. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. All right, I will make up for time, y'all. So good afternoon, everyone. And I'm just excited to be here. I appreciate the warm welcome and the opportunity that I've had so far to spend time with y'all. So we'll jump right in. I'll tell you a little bit about what my group has been working on over the past couple of years. So I like to start these talks with the question of the day, right? So we'll kind of expedite the first couple slides. Think about this question: when did you fall in love with STEM, or when did you fall in love with engineering? Everybody take a second and think about it. You'll notice me kind of peeking around. I'm looking at facial expressions. If this were a qualitative study and I had the opportunity to do observations, I would do some observation notes. So often in settings, depending on who the audience is, I'll get smiles, I'll get head nods, I'll get frowns, depending on the room or the audience. I'll hear or overhear people talking saying, never liked STEM, never liked engineering, right? And so when we think about the motivation behind our work, often my work is motivated by helping provide opportunities for folks to have wonderful experiences like the people in this room, or better experiences with STEM and with engineering. And so some of the things that Karen brought up around building and founding programs to help support people's engineering or STEM identities. So a lot of my work is motivated by that. And throughout my slides, you may see pictures of people that I love bringing along with me. These are some kiddos and staff from a after-school program that I'm the co-founder of. All right, so my group, what have we been working on lately? All right. Once again, people that I bring along with me in these pictures. At the foundation of what we do, we think about engineering identity development or engineering identity experiences. Often my work is around Black men in engineering and the experiences of Black men and participation in engineering. And we like to think about it as throughout lifespans, right? So my group has projects in the K-12 space through lifelong and family learning. And we're hoping to have projects in career is kind of like the latest space that we're thinking about. Applying for funding and doing some projects there. We seek to understand engineering student success mechanisms using assets-based approaches. With a couple of folks today, we've talked about this notion of assets-based approaches to our work, developing interventions to improve student success, providing guidance to institutions that are trying to do the work, and then using novel methods. When I was talking with the graduate students, I said, hey, I'm a methods guy. I just love learning about people's methodological choices and approaches, and also the messiness that happens in all of it. So my group, we've been spending a lot of time working in the IPA space, or interpretive phenomenological analysis, photo voice, which is what I'll talk about today. And then with young learners, I'm just so excited about the draw and engineer, draw scientists, that kind of using those tools. So my group has been pretty successful at getting funding to support the work. And I often show this slide, and especially when I go visit chemical engineering departments. This is another type of motivation. They're like, oh, this education research, what are you doing? Do people care about it? And this is one measure of maybe people caring, maybe. All right, and so today I'm not going to talk about any of this funded work. I'm going to talk about a project an unfunded project that was led by one of my previous undergraduate research students. And Joanne has since graduated. She's now working in petroleum industry, doing offshore work. So making lots of that. All right. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So we'll talk about this project that engaged photo voice with students and trying to seek to understand about their engineering identity experiences, right? So the scholarly literature exploring retention and persistence in engineering students has grown substantially over the past 2 decades. As we know, and we've had these conversations today, about half of the students who enroll in engineering programs either drop out or switch their majors. And a lot has been written about first-year experiences. You think about across the country, engineering programs, many programs have an engineering excellence or engineering first-year type of program. A significant part of leaving also happens during the sophomore. We were having conversations about this today, right? I've been talking with people about what happens in sophomore year when students are taking their first core engineering courses. I actually teach our material and energy balances course in chemical engineering, which is the first semester sophomore year course, and sometimes thermo, which is the second semester sophomore level course. Some literature has described these challenges as, you'll see this especially in educational literature around this idea of sophomore slump, and helping students get past this sophomore slump. Less clear from literature are the ways to support students during their sophomore year, especially as it relates to their engineering identity development. So the purpose of the study, because of the links between engineering identity development and persistence, especially for women and students of color, we read literature on engineering identity. As you'll hear our engineering folks describe, engineering ed folks say, kind of to like focus us in or hone our sensitivity is jargon that you'll read in papers to the aspects of the sophomore experience that might influence their decisions to remain in or leave engineering programs. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a methods person. And as we were approaching this project, we were thinking about what are methods or ways that we can get at understanding student experience that, as I'll list, a lot of these bullet points talk about why we selected photo voice. So photo voice is a participatory action research method designed to empower individuals within a community, and it centers their voices related or provides space related to the challenges and community-driven solutions. It offers individuals who are oftentimes marginalized an opportunity to reflect on their experiences through photography. I was joking with Robin earlier. I have my phone out and I'm always taking pictures, selfies, pictures, etc. The goal of Photo Voice is to empower participants to co-create knowledge about topics relevant to their community. So it allows participants to, and again, as we're thinking about what method to use for this particular study, engineering identity, sophomore year, to break past language, traditional communication barriers, and power dynamics. So oftentimes we're going into these studies and, oh, Professor Henderson is interviewing me. So how can I lessen that particular power dynamic? And Photo Voice is one way. Sharing empowers students to share different perspectives than the mainstream narrative. So what we found, oftentimes when we're interviewing or we have focus groups, it may take a while, and I'm actually one of those people, for me to come up with the words to describe or explain my experience. But I can tell you why I took this picture and how it relates and how I was feeling and the feelings that these pictures elicit, and then use that as a bridge to start talking about my personal experiences. In fact, in my own personal life, I photojournal and kind of document that while I'm like researching myself, but also just as a means for wellness, right? In my own personal life. So 3 main objectives for Photo Voice include documenting and critically reflecting on the strengths and weaknesses in one's community, engaging in collaborative group discussions. So you will see in the literature, sometimes people use photo elicitation and photo voice kind of interchangeably. We like to think about them as different. and that with Photo Voice, you bring a community of people together and think about what are the challenges within community and how can we fix it. Photo elicitation is more about that on personal experience. Promoting and then to promote change. Oftentimes, I think Robin and I were also talking about this. Oftentimes in Photo Voice research studies, we never get to see part 3. And actually, I would add a part 4. And today I'm going to tell you about how we handled part 3 in this particular project and part 2 of this project. But to promote change by reaching out to leaders or decision makers. So if you're talking about using Photo Voice, you ultimately want to get here. And many people who need to hear the experiences of students and are thinking about how to support student success, unfortunately, aren't necessarily, in colleges of engineering, I'll say, in my experience, aren't necessarily reading the journals, the publications, but they are saying, oh, let's develop this for students, right? And so, once again, we'll show you how we address number 3 in our work. So Photo Voice has been applied across multiple research settings, healthcare, community development, education. So one example in community development, there was a research study in which traditional gender role perceptions and the experiences of Indian adolescent girls were explored. So how they handled getting to level 3 or objective 3, the photographs were shared with the community and they ignited an atmosphere for social change and empowerment for the participants. In education, Henderson et al. Have explored students' perceptions of good teaching. And some of the things they found is students conceptualize good teaching as professors who demonstrated care in delivering course content and those who attempted to make personal connections with students. And then more closely related to our work, Eamon in 2017, they showed how 46 women graduate students and postdocs fared in their pursuit of leadership positions in male stereotype STEM fields. And some of the things they showed is that, Aaron and I were talking about this earlier, to overcome the barriers that they had experienced. They had resiliency and feelings of competence and recognition. They leaned into their support networks, and they authored what work-life balance should look like for them as a strategy to kind of, in my realm of thinking, and as a way to resist the pressures of this male-dominated environment. All right. So the framework that we brought into the study, so often you will see in Photo Voice studies is, and in Photo Voice manuscripts, people will bring in an introduction. They'll talk about the method and not necessarily include a framework, using more inductive approaches. We decided to bring in, and then what you'll read about in the literature, this notion of thinking with theory. So we decided to bring in engineering role identity, which a lot of folks in our community think about and write about. And the way we operationalize, just with the short definition, is how students position themselves and are positioned by others to be the kind of people who engage in engineering, right? So the 3 constructs, interests, performance/recognition, performance/competence, and then recognition. So in this particular project, as I mentioned, Photo Voice studies are characterized by participants' active exploration. And again, they're often exploratory or not centered with the framework in mind. Photo Voice studies don't always include the use of theory. We use theory to co-construct an understanding. Once again, when I talked about reading the literature on engineering identity, we really wanted to focus in on those constructs of recognition, interest, feelings of competence. And then just one other thing I'd like to point out from literature, once again, you'll see this kind of commonly used, this term experience near, right? So sometimes we bring frameworks to studies, and as we're even developing our interview protocol, right? We won't ever ask the students, so how's your community cultural wealth, right? But we develop an interview protocol that gets at that. For us, bringing engineering identity in those constructs, those terms are also what we like to think about as experience near, in that they're used in common everyday language. Interest. So can you describe your interests? Can you describe the ways that you feel recognized or not recognized as an engineer? So more approachable language is when we use this term experience near. That's what we mean. So easily digestible. So all right. So the research question, using photo voice, how do sophomore level engineering students illustrate their engineering identity development? And again, that really inspired by what I get to see happening in my classroom and students at the sophomore level deciding to stay in engineering or not. So using photo voice, what do we get to see? All right. So the research setting, a large public doctoral university with very high research activity, a Hispanic serving and Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander serving institution. The undergraduate engineering population by race, about 5% Black students. And again, this is for engineering specifically. About 20% Asian American students, about 27% Hispanic students. And this is the way that the institution labels or names folks here. One of the grad students was saying they have a hard time getting people or to ask people to check the boxes. Was it you or one of the students? We had this conversation where like how we try to box people in. In our part, I'm taking a side note because this is what I do. In our part 2 of the study, we actually asked our participants to actually write in, like, how do you describe your race? But this College of Engineering at this particular institution named folks in this way, about 20% white students, about 5.5% other, right? 27% women in this College of Engineering, and then the overall retention at first year, about 89%. And then sophomore year overall, and this is not by discipline, about 80%. But we do see this drop off. All right, so the 4 participants are quant people, not in this room, but our quant people in other spaces start to get antsy, like 4, n equals 4, what's going on here? So a little bit about our participants. We had 3 chemical engineering students and 1 electrical engineering student. 2 students identified as women, 2 identified as men, 2 Asian American students, 1 that only indicated mixed race, and we didn't, and no further explanation. And then 1 Latino. In part 2, we also had 4 students, which I'll talk a little bit about at the end. 2 men, 2 women, 2 Black students, 1 Latino student, and 1 who this woman wrote in Middle Eastern. And she also mentioned to us, had she not written in Middle Eastern, she wouldn't have had a box to check. So how do we gather evidence in our photo voice studies? So what we did is we engaged a pre-survey. We asked a little bit of demographic information, what courses were the students currently taking, and then their grade point average. Step 2, we had an orientation meeting where we talked about the study aims, introduced these concepts or constructs of interest, recognition, and competence. Talk about good photo taking, who to include, the ethics in photo voice. This is something I grapple with often with photo voice studies and photo elicitation. Over the summer, we conducted a photo voice project, and when you think about projects around identity, people want to give you pictures of themselves and their community. And so we talked about the ethics of this, but walking closely with your IRB, if you're considering doing a photo voice or photo elicitation study, making sure you've met all the metrics and checked all the marks as it relates to institutional review board approval. All right. And then people's approval to use their photos. So then we had the participants take photographs. We did 3 rounds. So we asked them to take up to 4 photographs per round, and it's about 3 weeks in between. So at the beginning of the semester, mid-semester, towards the end of the semester, so a semester-long study. And we asked them also to assign hashtags. So as far as we know, we're the first people that have published and asked folks to do that. We asked them to assign hashtag interest, recognition, or competence, and then anything else that they'd like to add. We use an adapted form of this showed method. Okay, so Wong and Burris are the founding women in photo voice, who have the earliest publications that we know of in photo voice. And so the method goes down a list of questions. What do we see here? Why did you take this picture? How does it relate to your life? So in the first time we met with the students, brought them, meaning bringing them back together for focus groups. We asked in preparation for focus group 1, capture photographs that explain why you decided to major in engineering, and that describe your engineering identity and understanding of the terms recognition, interest, and feelings of competence. Similarly, in the second round, same thing. Third round, same prompt. Right. So if you think about engaging photo voice or photo elicitation, you want to think about what prompt are you going to give your participants to go out and. All right, so in the analysis, once again, I love the multiple ways, and we all know this that have been engaged in analyzing evidence or mining through evidence. It's not always linear. Sometimes we go back. Sometimes we start over, right? My group uses often team approaches, and so we interrogate each other. So I may say, Karen, this is what I think I see. Interrogate me on this. Why do you think you see that? Where's the evidence, right? And what is the evidence, right? So we had the focus group recordings. We use external transcription services. In this particular study, while we describe using thematic analysis, we engage other methods. And I know this gets tricky when you try to write about it, but I can tell you about it because we think about IPA as we're going through and analyzing. We are also thinking about language. Traditionally, thematic analysis might not be described in that way, but we're thinking about linguistic level and how people say what they say. And I'm looking for gems, though in thematic, like IPA suggests, but though in thematic analysis, you might not read where people are saying, oh, we're looking and searching for gems. These are things that we want to highlight. So we're inspired by other methods, okay? And, I'm using an online version, so the slides are a little wanky here. All right, and so in addition to the focus group transcripts, we also bring in the photographs. This is where it gets super interesting in that we have the photographs. Of course, during the focus groups, they describe what the photograph means to them. Us as researchers, we also bring in thoughts about what they mean. And for us, it's important to go down this list of questions. So what do we see here? How does this relate to your life? So that I'm not making assumptions about what I see there, right? And then we also had their hashtags. All right. And so finally, we'll get to some of the analysis. All right. Yeah, so I just wanted to share this first piece. And again, participants could add multiple hashtags to their photos. So we won't get a perfect adding up here. But of the 36 photographs that were submitted, N equals 10 hashtags for interest we saw. Recognition, about 9. Competence, feelings of competence, N equals 11. 13 other hashtags such as work time, well-rounded, entrancing achievement, so on and so forth. All right, let's kind of dig in. We named 3 themes on the frame. So this delicate balance between life and studying engineering, or personal life and studying engineering, out of focus. So the details are not quite there yet. And then prefigures. So the ways that students make connections that build their confidence beliefs. So I'll kind of dive in. How are we doing with time? Okay. Okay, great. So on the frame, this describes the way that students may mention of balancing their personal and social lives and interests with their engineering interest. So some of the pictures we got here, hashtag feeling of competence, hashtag entrancing, hashtag well-rounded. And so let's talk a little bit about few of those. All righty. So with This first image, the layering of the clothing items might be linked to the layers of the challenges that Tuvok expressed feeling. He explains, the reason why I took that picture was that anytime I'm doing really good in school or really good in one particular part of my life, I have to drop the ball on a lot of other parts. So again, these competing priorities here. And so because I've been busy with work and school and stuff, that leaves my personal stuff messy. So again, we see Tuvok's picture. And then in focus group, Angeli responds by saying, I also feel that, but for me, it's less of a physical thing, but more mental clutter. So in these focus groups, there is this interaction. And again, participants are talking about how is this impacting me personally, but then also my community, right? Angeli, it's just like, oh, I have to do this, so on and so forth. Let's look at Angeli's picture in this theme. Hashtag entrancing was described as challenges or blurring her experience of being an engineering student. She said, this is a blurry picture of the moon that I took with some branches in the way. This is more towards interest, hashtag, because the moon is gorgeous. It's stunning, but the branches get in the way, making the moon blurry. That's kind of how I feel about engineering and my prospects in the future. Yeah, this seems very interesting. It's that there are all these other things that get in the way that kind of stop me from enjoying it now and maybe in the future as well. It's hard to see past it, to see the prospects, the good future, right? So hearing how the things that are getting in the way from them, from the participants achieving their goal. All right. On the frame, balancing personal and social lives. Now let's talk about Chagatai. Chagatai introduced a photo, hashtag well-rounded, that led to an exchange about relaxation, which I thought was quite interesting. Chagatai says, this is me going out to play golf with my buddies. A big part of my life is relaxing. I love relaxing. Me too. Whether it's going out fishing with my friends or just chilling at a golf range, and we'll jump down. That's what regrounds me after I feel anxious about anything. So in community, we started to see, and I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, but in community, we start to see these students talk about things that may or may not in the broader engineering setting. We're getting better because of people like Karen doing the work. These discussions about well-being and wellness, right? And so Chaka says, look, I enjoy relaxing, and I'm okay bringing this, talking about it within community. Tuvok says, I don't know about you guys, but I find that because school is sometimes on my mind so much that whenever I try to relax, I'm not actually relaxing. We're nodding our head because we've probably all been there. It's like I'm acting like I'm relaxing, but in the back of my mind, I'm stressed the entire time. Yeah, until I started doing work again. And then Chagatai added, I always feel a little guilty when I'm enjoying myself. It's really toxic. So thinking about step 3 in this photo voice, and step 2, in the community, they're bringing these things up. They have these physical images that they're attaching to their experiences. These are now physical artifacts, if you will, that I can share with decision makers. The transcripts, the write-up, but then also the images. You might have heard people use a quote around like a picture eliciting 1,000 words, right? So not only we have our own words and the way that we process it, but we have the words of the participants. Let's go to the second thing. Or as we close this out, the photographs correspond and the corresponding hashtags in this theme and the discussion illustrates some of the struggles that students had balancing multiple responsibilities, like how do they live on the frame, as we call it. The struggles include having to navigate a range of challenging emotions, feeling overwhelmed, being distracted, and even feeling guilty during relaxation. All right. So, wow, there are people we know on this. Students' willingness to discuss these challenges suggests that the photo voice approach empowered them to push back against identities of shame, right? Engineering stress culture. All right. So out of focus. The details are not quite there yet. And so what we get to see from Chagatai and Focus Group 2 Hashtag recognition from Tuvok, and hashtag recognition blurry. Interesting. With Angelique from Focus Group 2. So digging in a little bit. Chakatai says hashtag recognition. So sometimes I feel as if I need to change an environment. And so here he's describing how he fell asleep studying in his sister's room. Sister got this picture actually. She recognized my hard work, my grind. I'm thinking about the ways that we're recognized in engineering. Angela responds to this by saying, my parents are a great support system. It's just that sometimes they're not really the ones I need to prop me up. Especially, we see this often when we talk about students with from low socioeconomic status backgrounds. In other places, it's other places and other people that sometimes are necessary. And I can't really get it because all of my friends don't understand how hard it can be sometimes. And then Francis comes in and we'll jump down. It doesn't have to be like this big thing or whatever. They're just like, we're proud of you, keep going. So to me, I see this kind of tension. They're like some people in the community are saying, I want my friends and my family to prop me up. Go ahead, you got this. And others are saying, I need a little bit more than that expressive social capital, right? Tuvok brings in this picture, which I love, of course, electrical engineering. It's like 3 or 4 hours that you've worked and you end up just getting your grade back. And you're like, well, cool. And then you stash it away and you move on. Tuvok describes a desire to be recognized by his professors for the significant amount of work or effort that is required to complete the assignment. He went on to say, there really doesn't seem to be any feedback. And again, I'm jumping ahead, but as I reflect on my own teaching, I kind of use this. Like I have now, and also from what I've been reading, I have one, and I learned this from one of my colleagues, I have one instance where a student does not have to turn in their homework and they don't have to tell me why. Right. Or I do, now I don't even do in-class quizzes. I do take-home quizzes, right? Just to provide a little bit more flexibility. But again, you got one of these and you don't need to tell me why you missed it or not. So, out of focus, Angelique, hashtag blurry. I found it interesting that the moon kept coming up. My hashtags are recognition and blurry because as you can see, the image is of the moon and it's very blurry. I guess engineering is the moon. You can tell that it's the moon, but the details aren't completely there. And that's how I've been feeling. It's like, it's not quite, the details aren't quite there yet. I'm an engineer. I'm an engineering major. I'm becoming an engineer, right? All right. So at this point in their development as engineers, it seems especially important for others, whether those be family members, friends, engineering peers, instructors, industry professionals, to convey that while the students might be struggling, their struggles are being seen and have value, and they're being recognized. Prefigures the last theme, how students make connections that build their competence beliefs, right? So we have hashtag competence in this first picture by Francis, Tuvok, feelings of competence, and then Chagatai, making an impact. So Francis demonstrates use of resources to advance engineering competence, not promoting these resources, but this is what Francis said. I'm showing that I have multiple resource materials out. I'm currently using Chegg, probably not the best, but I have the book that actually shows how to do it, and I have the notes from the professor. All right. I think when we wrote this up, we were geeking out. We're like, oh, like a triangulating of resources. She went on to elaborate on how drawing on multiple resources made her feel competent. And we'll jump down. It's good to have all the materials available, and that represents competence. Tuvok, feelings of competence. At first glance, this workspace might not look tidy. But as Tuvok explained, this is my desk and my workplace. I was intrigued by the use of workplace. Even though it's a little bit messy, I put it under feelings of competence because it's taken me a long time to find a place that I'm really comfortable in. He highlights the necessity of finding what works for him as an individual. He goes on to elaborate, and we'll jump down to the goal there. I guess it makes a really big difference, but it took me a while to get there. And then last, in this theme, Chagatai says, making impact. I'll read a lot of this. I'm with the Engineers Without Borders organization, and we went last week to save the turtles with a little beach cleanup. This is my sort of interest. I guess, again, I'm really interested in sustainability. So I feel like going to the beach and having an impact on such a small scale by picking up trash on the beach. I've probably saved 1 or 2 turtles, laughter. But maybe in the future I could save a lot more. When the moderator asks, can you reiterate how this relates to your engineering journey? Chagatai said, yeah. So I feel one thing that drove me towards engineering was sustainability, because there are a lot of issues with sustainability right now. And so then kind of bringing this back together, I think I already mentioned the first point about like the sources being there. Tuvok described his experience, his desk as a workplace. These might be a marker of competence that prefigure his future as an engineer. Chagatai explained how his beach cleanup experience allowed him to make a connection between sustainability and a career in engineering. He was particularly drawn to making an impact. I can fix the entire beach one day. At this point in their engineering journeys, participants seem to value having the space to self-author what competence looks like for them. All right. So conclusions and recommendations. Participants were empowered to reflect and act through the process. Because we engage participants in the process of collecting, interpreting, and analyzing data, we gain an understanding of the navigational skills employed that led them to self-report that they had passed and would be continuing to their junior year. So oftentimes people are like, well, what happened to your participants? In this particular case, as they were registering for the next semester course, they reported to us that they were moving on. Students also authored their interest and fought for existence with that theme title, On the Frame of Multiple Priorities. The images illustrate the power of recognition by family and social networks. The study calls for faculty to broaden criteria for praise to include recognizing students' dedication, persistence, and interest. Translating to practice. So promoting students' engagement in outside interest and rest periods to recharge and retain the stamina needed for obtaining an engineering degree might be something that we can practice and do. Providing formalized structured time for students to meet their peers, especially in the classroom. Sometimes it's such a formal setting where we got to get through all this material. And again, I know we're getting better in engineering with Think, Pair, Share, and doing a lot of the things that we know improve student, and so active classroom, but continuing to build on those strategies. Proactively reaching out to students, formalizing. So once again, as a faculty member, thinking about how you might do this best and what works with your own personality and your methods. So one of my colleagues mentioned that she can't do this all the time for every student, but if she sees a student improve, sending them a short note that says, I noticed that you improved between exam 1 and exam 2. Just that being recognized in that way supports and helps students. Formalizing ways to acknowledge student effort. This is actually in a paper that my group wrote, and I think the paper is called Circle of Success. Yeah, it's from this. We got a little cover on JEE, but we see students, and I'm still trying to figure out how to do this, but formalizing ways to acknowledge students. I think, I've anecdotally, I don't know that I've seen any papers, but I've talked to colleagues about how you can highlight students in class. If there's time, you know how sometimes we highlight professional engineers. We could also do the same thing and highlight our students. Maybe we have students that are super involved in student orgs, students who feel comfortable with you sharing some of their achievements. Maybe they want a campus level award. You can do this to inspire other students in that way. And then institutionalizing support for student organizations. So circles of success that already do a great job of mentoring each other. So what we found, and again, in my own institution, is I'm the advisor for our NSBE chapter, National Society of Black Engineers, and they do a great job, wonderful job mentoring each other. But they also have to do their own fundraising, getting to conferences on their own, et cetera, thinking about ways that we can institutionalize and support students in the work that they're already doing. And then last, I want to talk about level 3, what we did with, living beyond the pages of the journal. So we carried the study to a photo exhibit. Right? And some of the participants stayed with us throughout the entire process, meaning this wall was, it had other things. We met with the College of the Arts. They gave us this wall. We measured the wall, decided how large the picture should be. Participants were engaged. Of course, my undergrad research student, Lupita, led this. So she took Joanne's work plus round 2 and helped develop the photo exhibit around engineering identity. Our former dean of engineering was there as a presenter, but to be engaged in the conversation. Turns out the dean of the College of the Arts, he was our keynote speaker there, Andrew on the right, and he has a mechanical engineering degree. Nobody, well, I won't say nobody, but we never knew this. So this was our way of, again, engaging the community, and like I said, the participants, or even into the printing of the photos. And we were up at the College of the Arts, like, wow, they have these huge printers up here and we can do this thing, and cutting these. So again, it was an all hands on deck kind of thing. The research team members, these are a few of the members there, participated. One of the faculty from our first year engineering program was there and gave remarks. Again, it was a way to further engage the community. All right. And I'm running over time. All right. And then I'd like to acknowledge the study participants, our collaborator, Dr. McGowan, who years ago, he used this photo elicitation years ago, kind of sparked, got me thinking about it, about photo elicitation. And then my group changes so often, we do another picture because people graduate, which is a great thing. And yeah, there's Joanne again. I like to highlight her because she led this particular project. And so with that, we'll take any questions.
That was great. Thank you so much. I was wondering if you discussed that focus group discussed the photos with the photo takers after each round, and if so, if that influenced how the photo takers took their future pictures, and if so, if that was like a helpful thing, or not, and how.
So yes, after each round, round 1, pictures, bring back the pictures. Your picture goes up. Why did you take it? What does this mean, right? And so I do think as the rounds progressed, people got a little more sophisticated in what they bring. And what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
Just if you were discussing it after each round, that influence, like, oh, now that I know how the discussion works, I'll be like, did that make them more intentional, or did that influence how they took their photos?
Sure.
Because they knew it was coming.
Sure. I didn't measure it, but I think as the focus groups progressed, they got a little more sophisticated, and even what is a good picture? The first one I submitted was blurry. What I have seen in the literature, there are lots of ways that people try to account for this. They have, so the way that we did it, they just knew that they were going to bring their pictures back. at a certain time. I've read a couple papers where they actually had their participants, they may send a message saying, now take your photo. So kind of this, they have a planned timing of engagement. So people maybe are less like, all right, I need you to stand like this. But again, I think when you're talking about community and what's important and building their consciousness around what's happening in their own communities, that might be okay. But yeah. That's interesting. Oh, and that's, glad you bring this up. This might be something to think about for future studies. Also in part 4, like how does, which I'm adding part 4, like how do the people that actually visited the exhibit, how do they engage, and then like their response? I think that's a whole nother part of a study that can be done. But yeah, sorry. More questions? Oh, yes, and then they're in there.
No, go ahead.
Oh, students first? Any students? No? All faculty? Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you.
Regarding the use of photos and whatnot, one way in engineering, I find sometimes it's pushback with qualitative methods.
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to just know how you approach that. Has it something you've always been interested in, like even as a PhD student, or is it something new that you're starting to incorporate in your work? And then 2, with the use of art, with the use of photos,
Yeah.
the word art didn't come up in your presentation, I don't think.
You said
Did use the word art, like art. So I've heard of the term like art-based research.
Yeah.
Want to know like how that fits in there, especially with participatory. Yeah, I think the word that you had earlier was community participatory research. Like maybe on slide.
Yeah.
And I want to know how that fits in that.
Community-based.
Yeah, community. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I've been growing as an engineering education researcher, I've started to add and do more qualitative,
Okay.
more qualitative work. But my training was traditional laboratory. I've always been that chemical engineer doing other stuff. So my laboratory work was bio. And so biological cells don't behave the way that we expect they should, and people don't either, right? But yeah, so I've just been more intrigued about, I call it, there probably is a better word, but the messiness of the qualitative, and also it took me a while to be okay with leaning into the interpretive. So a lot of the methods we use are interpretive. So interpretive phenomenological analysis, interpretive qualitative research. And it took me a while to be okay with that. Like, oh, what? I can bring my own positionality and my own experiences and not try to bracket it off, right? So what we do, so kind of a side part of that is what we do is, some of us took this course, if you will, called ProQual. And then we took ProQual, where we learn a lot about quality and how do you embed quality in your qualitative studies from the onset of thinking about what theories to bring into your work, just the pragmatic parts, the ethical pieces, lessening the power dynamics, so on and so forth. So if you think about arts-based research, photo elicitation, photo voice, draw and engineer, bring an artifact, they're all kind of related. They're cousins. And I think it depends on what community you're talking to, will depend on what they call it, right? So this is a book I would recommend. It's about photo voice. But even at the beginning of this, they talk about arts-based research, right? And they talk about photojournalism and photojournaling and photo elicitation. So I'll stop there. Yes.
I was curious what your thoughts were about taking something like this, the idea of interviewing sophomore students
Yeah.
in their career, their early career, and applying that to maybe the graduate level or even the assistant professorship level. I guess that's more me speaking about, where I'm at in my career and curious to see what I might take pictures of. So I was curious to see if that's something that your research group would be interested to expand to and any ideas that you have of what you might find if they were similar or different.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So I find myself like in all of my work now wanting to bring some photo component. So we just wrote a proposal for ASL, something about informal STEM learning. And we have a couple of research questions. One is the ways that parents engage in STEM, right? And we want to use photo, either photo voice or photo elicitation there. Also with the students, we're like the after school program is built on this P12 framework for engineering learning. But how are students conceptualizing engineering knowledge or like those skills? But yes, so even at the graduate level, I'd love to explore studies there. Faculty level as well. I'm doing my own photojournal. I'm actually writing a book chapter about my own experience as a faculty member in engineering, like pre-tenure. And it's hard. I'd much rather conduct a study and like with other people and not myself. That's the whole auto. I'm trying to understand n equals 1 and the 1 being myself. Right? But that's a different thing. But just to answer your question, yeah. I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I was wondering, I just love this idea of bringing the art to other people. But I think it would be difficult for somebody to walk through this and understand it without having a guide.
Oh yeah, there's a guide.
But is there a way, I mean, could you have like put little descriptions about?
They're
phrases,
on the wall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It gives a little diagram, and then it's a couple of sentence description, like you would at a art exhibit.
Yeah, super cool idea. I just love this project. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we were sitting down like trying to measure, okay, like where and how does it look? And yeah, so exactly
Very
that,
cool.
did that.
Yeah.
And we had the folks from the College of the Arts help guide us, yeah. But yeah. Oh, all right. Yeah.
A secondary round of applause. Oh, yeah.
Cool. All right, thank y'all, I appreciate it.
Thank you again, everyone, for being here. And we'll be sending out information about our next seminar, which will be in March
Ooh.
by Professor Sarah Wilson from the University of Kentucky. So thanks, everybody. We haven't